My parents cut me off and abandoned me like I didn't exist. I was sleeping in my car with my old daughter. Then a billionaire I once helped passed away, leaving me his entire empire and one secret file I would use to take revenge and put my parents behind bars. Can you even imagine a betrayal so deep, so gut-wrenching, that your own parents would disown you, leaving you to sleep in a freezing car with your sick child? What if, in that absolute darkest moment, a ghost from your past, a billionaire you'd once saved, swooped in to change everything, not just giving you an empire, but also the ultimate weapon for revenge against the very people who abandoned you? You're not going to believe what happened next. My name is Ariana Sanchez, and I'm 34 years old. Just a few months ago, my life was a dream. I was the star CEO of Sentinel Vault, a cybersecurity firm I built from nothing into a 9-figure powerhouse. Redwood Valley Tech Chronicle called me the conscience of the code. My corner office overlooked rolling green hills. I won awards for ethical innovation, and my photo was on the cover of Valley Investor, a wide, genuine smile, a sharp cobalt blue blazer. We had a beautiful house, filled with light and laughter. My husband, Mark, grilling on the deck. My 7-year-old daughter, Lena, her dark curls bouncing as she squealed through the sprinklers. We were living proof you could build something good, something ethical, in the cutthroat tech world. I was such a fool. It started so quietly, so insidiously. Not with a bang, but with a whisper, a polite, sharply dressed man handing me a thick manila envelope. A subpoena. Helix Fortress Labs, our main competitor, was suing us. Financial fraud. Theft of their core encryption. I actually laughed when I first read it. My entire company was built on the exact opposite. I would sooner burn my building to the ground than steal code. Then came the emergency shareholder meeting. I walked in, confident, my legal team beside me, ready to dismiss it all as a frivolous shakedown. But their lawyers, they started their presentation. Emails, supposedly from my encrypted server, emails I had never written, never seen. Server logs meticulously fabricated, showing unauthorized access from our IPs. Offshore wire transfers to anonymous shell corporations, signed with a digital forgery of my signature so perfect it made my stomach turn to ice. I sat there frozen. This wasn't just a lawsuit. This was an execution. Someone had framed us, framed me, with a terrifying level of sophistication. It was a digital assassination, surgically precise, and I hadn't even seen the blade coming. The media didn't wait for a verdict. The feeding frenzy was instant, brutal. Conscience of the Code was now cyberhero to tech thief. My magazine covers were replaced with unflattering courthouse photos, my face pale, strained, my eyes wide with shock they interpreted as guilt. My staff, the brilliant, loyal engineers I had mentored, started to leave. They had families, mortgages, reputations. I couldn't blame them. The corporate collapse was public, a spectacular bonfire. But the personal one? That was silent and so much worse. Mark changed. The easy, proud smile vanished, replaced by a permanent, pinched look of resentment. You just had to be so damn pure, didn't you? He spat one night. You pushed too hard. You made enemies. You were too arrogant to see it, Ariana. You brought this on us. The fights became constant, not about the accusations, he'd already convicted me in his mind, but about the consequences. The money, the whispers, the loss of our social standing. He accused me of ruining his name, his life. Then the court ruled. We lost. The fabricated evidence, impossible to disprove in the accelerated time frame, held. The judgment was astronomical, designed to kill the company and scatter its bones. Sentinel Vault was ordered to pay damages that vaporized our capital, our patents, everything. The final blow came swiftly. A judge ordered all my personal assets frozen. The house, the savings, Lena's college fund. Everything. I stared at the signed dissolution paper on the cheap laminate table in a rented, beige office that smelled of failure. The flickering fluorescent light gave me a pounding migraine. I had maybe $50 in cash. Mark had taken his designer suitcases and gone to his parents. He said he needed space. What he meant was he was detaching himself from the wreckage before it sank. My phone pinged. My heart gave a stupid, desperate leap. It was my mother. My parents, Elliot and Diane Carter, old money finance titans from the East Coast, had always disapproved of my tech venture. But they were still my family. Maybe they'd seen the news, maybe they'd call me home. I fumbled for the phone. 3 words. "We're done, Ariana." My fingers, clumsy and numb, typed a pathetic query. "Mom, what does this mean?" The reply was instant, and it wasn't from my mother. It was from the matriarch of the Carter dynasty, a woman who valued legacy above all else. "The Carter family does not tolerate reputation ruin. Do not come home." The pen slipped from my nervous fingers, hitting the cheap carpet with a dull thud. The buzzing of the fluorescent light grew louder, angrier, drowning out the sound of my own breathing. I was Ariana Sanchez, 34 years old, and I had just signed my own death certificate. My mother's text was the final shove into an abyss I was already falling into. The days that followed were a blur of cold panic and logistical humiliation. Red and pink notices appeared on our reinforced glass front door. The bank wasn't threatening foreclosure anymore, it was scheduling it. The water was cut off. Then the power. Our modern marvel went dark and silent, lit only by the California sun that now felt accusatory, exposing the dust on our expensive, useless furniture. Mark returned, but not for me. He came with an aggressive, smiling realtor. "Mark, we can fight this." I pleaded. "The judgment is based on fraud. I can appeal. I just need time." He snatched a blood-red envelope from the marble counter. "Time, Ariana? Look at this. We have an auction date. I'm not letting your mess drag my credit, my future, into the negative. We sell now, whatever we can get. We cut our losses." "Our losses?" I whispered. "This is our home. This is where Lena learned to walk." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found charming, now a precursor to him running away. "It's just a house, Ariana. And frankly, it's tainted. We're tainted. I'm filing for a legal separation." The words hit me harder than any court judgment. "What?" "It's for the best. For Lena," he said, using our daughter's name as his shield. "This scandal. I can't have her dragged through this." My parents agree. They think Lena should come stay with them for a while in Connecticut, just until this blows over. It's stable there. Clean. I stared at him. The man I married, suggesting I send my daughter 3,000 miles away to protect her from me. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Absolutely not. She stays with me." "With you where, Ariana?" he sneered, his fear making him cruel. "In this empty, foreclosed box? In a motel? I'm trying to protect my daughter. She is my daughter, too. And look what a great job you're doing. You're toxic, Ariana. The name Sanchez is mud, and you've splattered it all over me, and all over her. I'm trying to salvage one good thing from this wreckage, and you are too proud to see it." He left that night, his designer suitcases rolling quietly over the expensive hardwood floors. The next day, the final notice, 72 hours. I was out of options. My credit cards were declined. My friends in the industry were ghosts. I had nothing. Except them. My parents. Elliot and Diane Carter. The thought of calling them, of begging, was like swallowing acid. But then I looked at Lena, drawing on the back of an old electricity bill, humming, oblivious that her world was ending. I could be proud, or I could be a mother. I couldn't be both. I packed Lena's favorite stuffed rabbit, put her in her car seat in the one asset Mark had left me, the old, paid-off SUV he found too embarrassing to drive, and drove. Northgate Hills. Not just a neighborhood, a fortress. Massive iron gates guarding every driveway. My parents' house wasn't a house, it was a monument to old power. Carter's Sterling Holdings. A dynasty. I pressed the intercom. "It's me. It's Ariana." A long silence. Then the heavy buzz of the gate swinging open. Less like an invitation, more like an insect being allowed into a spider's web. We walked up the massive stone steps, past Greek god statues. The oak door opened before I could knock. A housekeeper I didn't recognize, new and stern, simply nodded. The foyer was a cathedral of silence and polished marble, smelling of old wood and money so old it had turned bitter. "There in the sitting room," she murmured. My father, Elliot Carter, was exactly where I knew he'd be, in his high-backed leather wing chair, a 17th-century chessboard beside him. The massive TV, disguised as an oil painting, was on. A financial news anchor was gleefully dissecting the final collapse of Sentinel Vault, complete with that awful courthouse photo of me. My father, holding a black onyx bishop, didn't look at me. He waited until the anchor said my name. Then he aimed the remote. The screen went black. The sudden silence was deafening. "So," he said, his voice dry as old paper, placing the bishop on the board. "The prodigal daughter returns. Not with fanfare, it seems, but with the stench of failure." "Hello, father," I said, my voice tight. Lena hid behind my leg, clutching her rabbit. My mother, Diane Carter, was perched on a silk-covered chaise, pretending to read a book, perfectly coiffed, her face a smooth, unreadable mask. She didn't look up. "Ariana," she said, a cool acknowledgement. "I need help," I said, swallowing the bile of my pride. "Sentinel is gone. The house is in foreclosure. Mark is gone. They've frozen everything. I'm bankrupt. I'm being slandered. I need a loan, just a temporary loan, to rent an apartment for me and Lena and to retain counsel." Elliot finally turned his head. His eyes, the gray of a winter sky, swept over me, noting my loose clothes, my unwashed hair, my cheap, worn-out shoes. His gaze was an appraisal, and he found me worthless. "A loan," he repeated, as if tasting a foreign, disgusting word. "Carter Sterling Holdings does not rescue media trash. We divest. We cut the infection before it spreads. You, Ariana, are a contagion. You have dragged the Carter name through the filth. Your little Silicon Valley fantasy has made us a public embarrassment. And now you come here with your hand out, wanting to use our good name as a life raft, the same name you refused to use when you got married." My company was framed. I shot back, my voice rising, trembling. "This is not about my pride. This is about your granddaughter. Look at her. She has nowhere to sleep tonight." At the mention of Lena, Diane finally stirred. She looked at Lena. For a moment, her mask wavered. She gave a tight, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she looked away, out the window at her perfect, manicured gardens. "Children shouldn't be raised around scandal," she said, her voice light, conversational, as if discussing the weather. "It leaves a stain. Perhaps, Ariana, you should consider what is truly best for her. Letting a more stable family raise her. Someone who can provide for her." The blood drained from my face. It was Mark's words again, but colder, sharper, coming from my own mother. She wasn't suggesting a temporary stay. She was suggesting I give up my child. "How can you say that?" I whispered, my whole body shaking now, not from fear, but from a rage so profound it choked me. I built that company from nothing. I worked nights. I slept on the office floor. I did everything right. I refused those dirty deals, father. The same kind of aggressive deals you always encouraged. I refuse to be like you. And there's your lesson." Elliot snapped, his voice a whip. "You were not like me. You were weak. You believed ethics were a business model. Ethics are a luxury, Ariana, one you clearly could not afford. I told you to come into the firm. I told you this tech fantasy was a fool's game. You didn't listen. This accident is the price of your arrogance." He walked to a small antique desk, unlocked a drawer, and took out a wallet. No, not a wallet. A gold money clip. He peeled off a few bills. A thick wad, but not enough for a lawyer. Not enough for a first and last month's rent. Enough for a few weeks in a cheap motel. He tossed the cash onto the polished surface of the chessboard. The bills scattered, landing on the ivory and onyx pieces. It was a gesture of profound, theatrical contempt. Charity for the pathetic. "This," he said, "is your severance. A payment for silence. As of this moment, as far as the public, our partners, and our world are concerned, Elliot and Diane Carter do not have a daughter named Ariana. We have already instructed our press secretary. You are no longer part of this family." The finality of it hung in the air, colder than the marble floor. I looked at the money, then at my father's merciless face, then at my mother's elegantly turned back. They were, in this moment, complete strangers. Monsters. My hands were shaking, but I walked forward. I didn't look at him. I looked at the money. I needed it. Not for me. For Lena. For milk. For gas. For one more night of safety. With a humiliation that burned like fire, I gathered the crumpled bills. I turned without a word, pulling Lena close. Her hand felt so small and warm in mine. As we walked out of the vast, cold room, Lena, in her 7-year-old innocence, piped up, her little voice echoing in the mahogany silence. "Bye-bye, Grandma. Bye-bye, Grandpa." I stopped, my back to them, my eyes squeezed shut. I waited for one of them to say something, to call her name, to say goodbye. There was only silence. I opened my eyes and walked out. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind us. The sound as sharp and final as a guillotine, severing the last thread of the bloodline. The wad of cash was thick with my father's contempt, but it was still cash. It felt greasy in my hand, a physical manifestation of my failure. I used it. I hated myself, but I used it. I sold what little I had left. My wedding ring went to a pawn shop. I sold the designer clothes Mark had abandoned. I sold my good laptop, the powerful machine I'd used to build my company, and bought a cheap refurbished one with cash. It was enough. It bought us 3 weeks at the Starlight Motel, a long, low building of painted cinder block and neon despair squatting by the freeway. The sign was missing the S, so at night, it just read Starlight Motel. It had a door that locked, a shower that produced lukewarm water if you were patient, and a window that looked out onto an ocean of asphalt. For Lena, it was an adventure. For me, it was a slow-motion countdown to 0. Mark found me there. Not to reconcile. He came with an envelope. "Just sign it, Ariana," he said, not meeting my eyes, placing the dissolution of marriage papers on the cracked laminate table. "It's an amicable split. No fault." I scanned the pages. It says shared custody. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold and defensive. "That's just legal boilerplate. You know my parents offer stands. She'd be safe there. Stable." He wasn't offering to share custody. He was offering me a way out of his financial life. By claiming shared custody, he could argue against paying child support, knowing I didn't have the money for a lawyer to fight him. He was washing his hands of me, of my scandal, and using our child as the soap. "Get out," I whispered. "Ariana, be reasonable. Get out." He left the papers. He also left a single key on the table. "The SUV. It's paid off. It's in your name. I don't want it. Consider it severance." That word again. The word people used when cutting a diseased limb off their body. A week later, the motel manager was banging on the door. "Check out, lady. You're paid up through yesterday." "Please," I begged, my voice cracking. "I just need a few more days. I'm expecting a wire." "I don't care what you're expecting," he spat. "You're out now, or I call the police." Our 2 duffel bags were already on the grimy sidewalk. He had thrown us out. That night, we had nowhere to go. Lena was tired, her cheerfulness finally fading into confusion. "Mama, where are we going? Is the hotel adventure over?" I looked at her small, trusting face in the rearview mirror. I looked at the old SUV. It was spacious. For a car. It was shelter. "No, baby," I said, forcing a brightness into my voice that felt like swallowing glass. "The best part is starting. We're going on a real adventure. We're going car camping." "Car camping?" Her eyes lit up. "Like in the mountains?" "Even better. We're urban explorers. It's a secret mission." Our life in the SUV began. I folded the back seats flat, laid down our thin blankets. Lena's stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy, went on our shared pillow, my balled-up winter coat. I tried to make it fun. The dome light was our campfire, the hum of the freeway a river. She believed me. Our days fell into a harsh rhythm. We woke with the sun, windows thick with condensation. Brushed our teeth with a bottle of water, spitting into the supermarket bushes. Then, the Redwood Valley Public Library. Our sanctuary. Warm, immaculate bathrooms, free Wi-Fi, a children's section. Lena would sit for hours, happy safe. I'd sit at a corral, my cheap laptop plugged into the wall, and apply for jobs. Hundreds of resumes. CTO, VP of Engineering, Senior Cybersecurity Architect. Rejections came swiftly. I lowered my sights. Project manager. Senior developer. Nothing. Desperation. IT support. Administrative assistant. Data entry. My name, Ariana Sanchez, wasn't just mud. It was radioactive poison. I was the woman on the cover of Valley Investor, not as a hero, but as the villain. A liability no one would touch. I finally got a phone interview. A small 20-person startup. The HR manager sounded young, enthusiastic. We had a great conversation. He was impressed with my technical knowledge. Then he paused. Hey, this is a weird question, but are you by any chance the same Ariana Sanchez from the Sentinel Vault? You know, the whole Helix Fortress thing. My stomach turned to ice. Yes, but the allegations were completely fabricated. I was framed. I'm appealing the judgment. The line went quiet for a long, terrible second. Then his voice changed, becoming cool, professional, distant. I see. Well, thank you for your time, Miss Sanchez. The thing is, we just cannot in good faith put our core systems and our data architecture in the hands of someone who is even peripherally associated with an investigation for code fraud. We wish you the best of luck. The line went dead. He hadn't just rejected me. He had used my greatest strength as the weapon against me. Money was a constant, screaming terror. I'd buy Lena a single banana or a small carton of milk. What about you, Mama? She'd ask. Oh, Mommy's on a new health diet, I'd say, forcing a smile. Just drinking water. It's very healthy. I was so hungry my hands shook. So tired I could barely think. But I smiled. I smiled for Lena. The nights were the worst. After the library closed, we'd return to our spot. Lena, exhausted, would fall asleep instantly, curled up against me for warmth. I couldn't sleep. I'd sit in the driver's seat, the cheap laptop balanced on my knees, tethered to the supermarket's weak Wi-Fi. I wasn't just applying for jobs. I was fighting. I reviewed every email from the Helix Fortress lawyers, every scrap of fabricated evidence. I searched for legal precedents. My CEO brain, the part of me that knew how to solve impossible problems, clicked back on. I was not just a homeless woman in a car. I was an investigator. I was going to find out who did this to me, even if I had to do it from a parking lot. Lena, in her innocence, was my anchor. We're astronauts, Mama, she'd whisper, pointing up. And we're exploring a new planet. She'd taped her crayon drawings of big, beautiful houses and a purple comforter to the fabric ceiling of the car. I'd wake up in the cold, gray dawn, my neck stiff, and the first thing I'd see was a child's drawing of a life we no longer had. The illusion of our adventure shattered on a Tuesday. Late. Maybe 2 a.m. Tap, tap, tap on the glass right next to my head. I bolted upright, my heart slamming. A flashlight beam blinded me. A security guard. Can't sleep here, he said. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just resting my eyes. My daughter is sick. We're on our way to, I don't care, he cut me off. I see this vehicle here every night. This ain't a campground. This is private property. You got 10 minutes to move along, or I'm calling the police. Vagrancy. Vagrancy. Not CEO. Not innovator. Not mother. Vagrant. My hands shook so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. Mama, where are we going? Lena asked. The mission changed, sweetie, I choked out, pulling out of the parking spot. We have to find a new planet. I drove aimlessly, tears finally breaking free, hot and silent. Where do you go when you have nowhere to go? We found another spot, darker, in an alley behind a closed-down warehouse. It felt less safe. The next day, from the library, I tried a new low. I called old contacts, friends I'd mentored. Most didn't pick up. My name, my number, was an incoming call they didn't want. One, a woman named Sarah, who I'd promoted twice, actually answered. Ariana, her voice was cautious. Sarah, hi, I said, too bright, too desperate. Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but I'm in a tough spot. I was just wondering if you'd be a character reference, or maybe if you'd heard of anything at all. A long, painful silence stretched down the line. Ariana, she said finally, her voice hushed. I can't. I'm so sorry. My new firm, we do business with Helix Fortress. I just can't be seen. I can't be associated. Another pause. I'm really sorry, Ari. Take care. She hung up. Take care. Every morning, I'd wake in the cold, gray light. I'd look at Lena, still asleep, her breath a small white cloud, her face peaceful. And I'd make the same silent promise. I will get it all back. Not the company, not the magazine covers, not the glass house. I will get you a bed. I will get you a warm, safe bed. That morning, after Sarah hung up, I started the car. The engine sputtered, then caught. The little orange fuel light was on. It had been on for a day. The needle rested on E. My wallet, the Italian leather Mark had given me, was a joke. Inside, a single $5 bill and a handful of change. $6.12. I looked at Lena, humming in the back, taping a new drawing of a castle to the window. I was a former CEO, worth hundreds of millions on paper, and I was about to run out of gas. I finally understood. Pride doesn't keep you warm. Ethics don't buy you food. My father's lesson, as cruel as it was sinking in. I was at the bottom, and the edge was crumbling. The $6.12 bought me just under 2 gallons of gas. Enough to stop the needle from resting on E, but not enough to stop the orange light from glowing. A constant, dull reminder. That night, the weather turned. A brutal early winter storm rolled in, a churning mass of black clouds unleashing cold, horizontal rain. The wind howled, shaking the SUV. I'd parked us under a freeway overpass, thinking the concrete slab would offer protection. Instead, it just amplified the sound, turning the wind's roar into a hollow, booming echo chamber. Lena had been quiet all evening, picking at her half of a peanut butter sandwich. She had a small cough, a dry, sticky sound I'd been trying to ignore. Now, in the hollow darkness, the cough sounded wetter, heavier. "Mama," she whispered, her voice small. My rabbit. I can't find Mr. Floppy." "He's right here, sweetie," I murmured, fumbling in the dark. I clicked on the dome light. Her face, illuminated in the pale, weak glow, was flushed a deep, unhealthy red. Her eyes were glassy. "You're okay, baby?" I said, my voice automatically soothing, even as my heart began to pound a new, frantic rhythm. I pushed her damp curls off her forehead. She was on fire. Her skin wasn't just warm. It was burning. A dry, radiating heat that was terrifying. But she was shivering. Her whole small body was trembling under the thin blankets. "Mama, I'm cold," she whimpered. And her words, so contrary to the heat I was feeling, broke my panic open. No, baby. You're okay. Mama's here." My hands were shaking. I grabbed the gallon of water and a t-shirt, soaked a corner, and tried to wipe her face. She moaned and turned away, body tensing. "It's too cold," she cried. Her breathing was shallow, fast. I put my ear to her chest. A faint crackle, like dry leaves. I didn't think. I leaped from the cargo space into the driver's seat, jeans catching on the console. I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine, cold and damp, sputtered. Come on. Come on. Come on, get caught. I slammed the car into drive and peeled out from under the overpass, tires screaming on the wet pavement, rain lashing the windshield so hard the wipers were useless. I didn't know where the nearest hospital was. I just drove toward the brightest lights, my eyes straining, my heart chanting a single desperate prayer. Please, please, please. Don't take her. Take me. Take anything. Just don't let her. Please. I can't. I saw a blue sign, St. Jude's. Not the high-end medical center my family used. A city hospital. I didn't care. I pulled up to the emergency entrance, right past the no parking signs, and left the car running, hazards flashing. I ran to the back, ripped the door open, unbuckled Lena, and scooped her up. She was frighteningly limp, her head lolling against my shoulder, her body still consumed by those violent, rattling shivers. I burst through the automatic doors. The ER was a circle of hell. Bright white, smelling of bleach and old coffee, filled with chaos and beeping machines. I ran to the triage desk, a fortress of high laminate counters and bored, exhausted-looking nurses. "My daughter." I gasped, the words tearing from my chest. She's burning up. She can't breathe. Please. One nurse, her face a mask of practiced indifference, looked up from her computer. Fill this out, she said, pushing a clipboard. No, you don't understand. She's really sick. Lena let out a wheezing cough, so awful it made the nurse finally look. Really look. She saw Lena's flushed face, her glassy eyes, her shuddering frame. The nurse's demeanor snapped. Get her in here. Room 3 now. Everything became a blur. A young doctor, dark circles under his eyes, was suddenly there, pressing a stethoscope to Lena's back, shining a light in her eyes. A nurse wrapped a tiny blood pressure cuff around her arm. Temp is 103.8, a voice said. O2 sat is 89. Mom, what's her history? The doctor asked, sharp, not looking at me. No allergies. She was fine this morning. Just a cough. We've been sleeping in the car. It's cold. The last part came out as a whisper. The doctor's eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. No judgment, just exhaustion. Okay, it looks like a nasty case of pneumonia. We're going to start her on a broad-spectrum antibiotic, get in 4 in, and she needs oxygen. We need to admit her. We'll run a full panel, chest x-ray. A few days at least, get her stabilized. Relief washed over me, so total, so profound, my knees buckled. A few days? Stabilized? They were going to help her. Thank you, I wept. Thank you so much. A nurse, this one with a kind, older face, gently touched my arm. Let's get her set up. I just need you to go to the admissions desk. Get her registered, right out here to the left. Okay. Yes, of course. I stumbled back out to the main desk, to a different window marked Admissions Financials. A woman in a neat blue blazer sat behind the glass. Name, she asked. Lena Sanchez. She's just being admitted. Pneumonia. Insurance card and a copay. The words froze me. Insurance. My Cobra payments had lapsed. I hadn't had the $400. I don't have insurance right now, I said. The woman's smile didn't change, but her eyes hardened. Okay, that's fine. We'll have to take a deposit for the admission for a multi-day pneumonia case. Let's see. She typed, printed a sheet, and slid it under the glass. An estimate. The number at the bottom had 4 zeros. A financial death sentence. I don't have this, I whispered. My accounts are frozen. It's a legal issue. Please. I'm her mother. Isn't there a form, something I can sign? This is the form, ma'am, she said, tapping the paper. I have a debit card, I said, my voice rising in panic, pulling out my wallet. The debit card for the one checking account I'd opened. Almost empty. Maybe you can just hold it? She took the card, her expression unchanging. She swiped it. The little machine made an angry beep. Declined. Try it again. I insisted. It's a new account. Sometimes it's finicky. She swiped it again with exaggerated slowness. Beep, declined. She slid the card back to me. I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't admit her without a deposit or active insurance. But the doctor said. My world was tilting. The doctor said she needs to be admitted. He said she needs oxygen. And she does, the woman said, and for the first time, a sliver of genuine, practiced sympathy entered her voice. It was a script. But we are not a state-funded clinic. What I can do is have the doctor write you a prescription for a Tylenol suppository and an antibiotic. You can try to manage the fever at home. Keep her hydrated. But for an inpatient admission, our hands are tied. Rage, cold and black, eclipsed the panic. My daughter is sick. She is 7. And you are turning her away over a piece of paper? Over a deposit? How can you? How can this system? How can you do this? Ma'am, if you're going to raise your voice, I will have to call security. She had already turned back to her computer. I was dismissed. I walked back to room 3 like a zombie. The kind nurse was just attaching an oxygen monitor to Lena's finger. Lena whimpered, eyes still closed. What? What are you doing? I asked. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry, the nurse said, her kindness now feeling like a fresh wound. Admissions said you're taking her home. The doctor's just signing the prescriptions. They were discharging her. They were sending a 7-year-old with pneumonia and an 89% oxygen level back out into a monsoon. I picked Lena up. Her small, hot body felt impossibly heavy. I didn't take the prescriptions. I knew I didn't have the $20 to fill them. I walked back through the automatic doors. The car was still running, its red hazard lights flashing, pathetic beacons in the driving rain. The wind ripped the door from my hand as I tried to open the back. I got inside, the smell of wet upholstery and our own cramped life enveloping us. I laid Lena down on the blankets. I took off my own coat, the only warm, dry thing I had, and spread it over her. I used the last of the bottled water to wet the t-shirt, wiping her face, her neck, her arms. I gave her a few sips of the cheap children's fever reducer I'd bought at the supermarket, my only medicine. She coughed and choked it down. I climbed into the driver's seat, soaked to the skin, my own teeth chattering. The rain was so loud it was like we were inside a drum. Thunder cracked right over the overpass and the ground itself seemed to shake. I put my head down on the steering wheel and I broke. I didn't just cry. I howled. A raw, animal sound of pure, bottomless despair that I had been holding back for months. I pounded the wheel with my fists. I prayed, for the first time since I was a child. Not to God, but to the universe, to anything. Please, I sobbed. Please don't take her. Take me. Take anything. Just don't let her. Please. I can't. Lena's coughing from the back seat cut through my breakdown. It was worse. A sharp, barking, desperate sound. A fight for air. I snapped upright. I was going to do it. I was going to drive to Northgate Hills. I was going to drive the SUV through my father's wrought iron gates. I would set the car on fire on his lawn. I would throw a rock through their window. I would do something to make them see, to make them help. I would trade my last shred of dignity. I would beg on my hands and knees. I would be the reputation ruin they so feared. Right on their doorstep. I put the car in gear, my eyes blinded by tears and rage. At that exact moment, as I was about to pull out, a pair of headlights, brighter than any I had ever seen, sliced through the darkness. They didn't just pass. They slowed. A long, impossibly black sedan, a Bentley, pulled up alongside me. Its engine, a low, confident purr. My first thought was security or police. They were here to arrest the vagrant who had left her car running at the ER. The passenger window of the Bentley glided down. A soft, warm light spilled out. A light, soft tap, tap, tap came at my window, which was inches from the Bentley's. I flinched. Then, my hand shaking, I pressed the button to lower my own window. The rain and wind blasted my face. Standing in the tiny gap between the two cars, as if the storm didn't exist, was a woman. Middle-aged, sharp, intelligent eyes, hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a simple, elegant black raincoat, and she wasn't even remotely wet. She didn't shout over the storm. She spoke in a calm, clear, projecting voice. "Miss Sanchez." I just stared, dumbfounded. "Miss Ariana Sanchez?" "Yes," I managed to say. The woman nodded as if a complex problem had just been solved. "My name is Nina Morales. I am the housekeeper for Mr. Roman Lockhart." The name meant nothing to me. She leaned a little closer, her gaze unwavering. "Mr. Lockhart is dying. He is at his home, and he says he owes you his life." Roman Lockhart. A blank slate. A name from a different world. "I'm sorry," I said, the rain blowing in and stinging my face. You have the wrong person. I've never met anyone by that name." Nina Morales didn't blink. "You do not know him, Miss Sanchez, but you saved him. 12 years ago, Highway 17, during a storm just like this. You pulled him from a burning car." The words hit me like a physical blow. A key turning in a lock I had forgotten existed. 12 years ago. I was 22, a new software engineer, 6 months out of college, driving my first car, this very SUV, though it was newer then. Driving home from a late-night coding session exhausted. The memory, buried under a decade of ambition and life, and now failure, rushed back with perfect, sudden clarity. The rain, just like this. The treacherous, winding curves of Highway 17. I was going slow. Then I saw it. Headlights, swerving wildly. A dark sedan clipped the barrier, shot across the empty lanes, and slammed into the rocky embankment. I was the only other car. I pulled over, heart hammering, hands shaking. Left my headlights on, pointed at the wreck. Gasoline and smoke, a wisp from under the hood. I didn't think. I ran. The driver's door was jammed. "Are you okay?" I screamed, but the man inside was slumped over the wheel. Blood. I ran back to my SUV. Adrenaline, a hot metallic taste. Tore through my trunk, found the tire iron. Ran back. The shatter of glass. Rain, small sharp fragments stinging my face. I reached in, hand cutting, fumbled for the seatbelt release. It was stuck. The smoke was thicker now, turning from white to a greasy, sick black. Fire. I screamed to the empty, rainy night. I pulled at the man's arm. He was heavy, unconscious. I put my feet on the car door and pulled with a strength I didn't know I possessed. The seatbelt, under the dead weight, finally gave way. I dragged him 20, maybe 30 feet, back toward my car. And then the wreck whooshed, not an explosion like in movies. A sudden, violent roar as the gasoline caught, and the whole front end of the car was engulfed in a bright orange sheet of fire. I stood there, gasping in the rain, staring at the man on the wet asphalt and the inferno that had been his car. I called 911 on my old flip phone, my voice trembling. "There's a crash. Highway 17. Mile marker. I don't know. A man. He's hurt. The car is on fire." I stayed until I heard the sirens in the distance. A wail cutting through the storm. Then I looked at the man. He was breathing. And I was, a 22-year-old kid on a probationary new hire contract. I had a final project review in the morning. I had just saved a man's life. I didn't want to be late. I got back in my SUV, my hands covered in his blood and my own, and I drove away. I never gave my name. Never filed a report. It was just a thing that had happened on a dark night. I hadn't thought about that night in at least 10 years. I was staring at Nina Morales, the rain dripping from my chin, the memory screaming in my head. From the back seat, Lena let out a hacking, wet cough that shattered the moment. "I remember that," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I never knew his name." "His name is Roman Lockhart," Nina said, her voice softening just a fraction. "He is the founder and chairman of the Lockhart Transit Group, a logistics and autonomous transport empire. He is one of the wealthiest men you have never heard of because he values his privacy above all else. He has been looking for the girl with the gray hoodie and the old sedan for 12 years, Miss Sanchez. He is a man of significant resources, and he spent a great deal of them trying to find you. But you left no trace. Until now." "But how?" "Why no. He is dying. Cancer. He wanted to find you before the end. When your company's legal issues became public, it triggered an alert in the private investigation protocols he set up. Your name was suddenly in court filings tied to newspaper articles and the vehicle registration records for your asset seizure. They still listed this SUV, the one from 12 years ago. He has been watching you, Miss Sanchez. He has been watching what they did to you for the last 3 months." My mind reeled. A billionaire had been watching me fail, watching me lose everything. As if she read my mind, Nina's gaze shifted, past my face, into the dark interior of my car. Her sharp, intelligent eyes landed on the small, huddled shape under my coat. She heard the cough, the same one that was tearing my own heart apart. The professional calm in her demeanor cracked. "That child is sick," she stated. It was not a question. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "You are at a hospital that just turned you away, are you not?" she asked. The shame and rage were so total, I could only nod again. Nina's voice became steel. "Follow me. Mr. Roman has a full medical wing at his home. He has a private, round-the-clock physician and no shortage of hospital beds. We do not need your insurance. We do not need your money. We just need to go now." She was already turning to get back in the Bentley. My mind was screaming no, this was insane. A nightmare. A stranger in a Bentley in the middle of a storm, talking about a billionaire I saved a decade ago. It was a con. A kidnapping. It was impossible. But then Lena coughed again. A small, weak, rattling sound. the sound of a little body that was losing its fight. The hospital had turned me away. My parents had turned me away. My husband had turned me away. The entire world had turned me away. This woman, this stranger, was offering a doctor. I put the car in drive. The old engine rumbled, a pathetic counterpoint to the Bentley's silent power. Okay, I whispered to the empty, rain-lashed windshield. Okay. The Bentley's red taillights were my only guide. We headed north toward the coast, onto a dark, twisting two-lane highway. The storm was a living thing out here. The wind slammed into the SUV, trying to push me off the road. Rain came in blinding sheets. To my right, a black void that I knew was the ocean. To my left, massive, ancient pine trees thrashed. I was terrified. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My gas light was still on, but the red lights of the Bentley stayed steady, never going too fast, pulling me forward through the darkness. After what felt like an hour, the Bentley turned onto a road that wasn't a road. An unmarked gravel path hidden by cypress trees. I followed. The path wound up a steep hill, and then I saw the gates. Massive, black iron, 20 feet high, set into a wall of dark, mossy stone. Lockhart Cliff Estate, worked subtly into the iron. The gates didn't buzz. They didn't groan. They just swung open, silent as a tomb. We drove through. The driveway, paved with old cobblestones, wound through a private forest so dense it blocked out the storm. It was suddenly quiet. And then the house appeared. Not a house. A fortress. Not a modern glass box like the one I had lost. A sprawling, multi-level mansion of rough-hewn gray stone and dark, heavy timbers, built directly into the side of the cliff. It looked as if it had been there for 1,000 years. Warm yellow light spilled from its many windows, a stark, defiant contrast to the cold, blue-black of the storm and the sea. The Bentley pulled under a vast covered entrance. I stopped behind it, my engine idling, my heart in my throat. Before I could even process what to do, my back door was pulled open. Nina was there. With her, a man in dark, tailored slacks and another in medical scrubs. "This is Dr. Albescu," Nina said. He was older, with a kind, serious face and a quick European accent. He didn't wait for my permission. He was already leaning into my car, movements economical and practiced. Lena, eyes half open, whimpering. He put a hand on her forehead. Listened to her chest for 2 seconds. She needs oxygen. Now. A nurse appeared from a side door with a gurney. Dr. Albescu and the nurse, with a gentleness and speed that was breathtaking, lifted Lena from the car seat and onto the gurney. I scrambled out of the car, my legs numb. Wait. Where are you taking her? To the medical wing, Nina said, her hand on my elbow, steadying me. This way. You can come. She guided me through a side entrance into the warmest, quietest, most beautiful house I had ever seen. The floors were polished wood. The air smelled of old books and beeswax. We went down a long hall, through a set of unmarked double doors. And suddenly, I was in a hospital. A fully equipped, state-of-the-art, 2-bed medical clinic. Monitors, oxygen tanks, computer terminals, sterile counters. They placed Lena on one of the beds. A small oxygen mask was gently slipped over her face. The doctor was already opening a sterile pack. The nurse was setting up in 4. They moved with a calm, focused efficiency that made the ER at St. Jude look like a chaotic joke. I stood in the doorway, my wet clothes dripping onto the polished floor, trembling useless. I watched as the monitor above Lena's bed lit up, and her oxygen saturation number, a terrifying 89, slowly began to climb. 90, 91. No one had asked me for an insurance card. No one had asked me for a credit card. After 10 minutes, the number was at 95. Lena's breathing, though still shallow, had lost its rattling, desperate edge. She was stable. Nina touched my arm. "She is in good hands, Miss Sanchez," she said softly. "Dr. Albescu will stay with her now. Mr. Lockhart would like to see you." I was in a daze. I let her lead me back out, another hall, quieter, carpeted. We stopped at a pair of large, heavy doors made of dark cherry wood. Nina paused. "He is very weak. The end is very near. This will be difficult. Please be prepared." She opened one of the doors. The room was vast, but not empty. A master bedroom dominated by a huge fireplace, now cold. But one side had been converted. It was a hospital. For poles, beeping monitors, a ventilator machine, all manned by a private night nurse who nodded at Nina and slipped out. In the center was a large, fully articulated hospital bed. And in the bed was a man. He was a wisp. Gnarled and thin, his body lost in the white sheets. His skin the color of old parchment, translucent, stretched tight over the sharp bones of his face. He looked to be in his late 60s, but the cancer had stolen decades, leaving nothing but a fragile shell. His eyes were closed. I stood at the foot of the bed, a ghost myself, a 34-year-old vagrant, dripping rainwater and failure onto a priceless antique rug, staring at the billionaire I had saved and forgotten. Nina moved to the bedside. She didn't touch him. She just spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Sir? Mr. Roman?" No response. "Sir," she said again, a little louder. "She is here. The girl. The girl from the highway. Ariana. She is here." His eyelids, thin as paper, fluttered slowly, with an effort that seemed to take every last ounce of his strength. They opened. His eyes were not dull. They were a pale, piercing blue, and they were alive. They scanned the room, unfocused at first. Then they landed on me. He stared at me, and I stared back. A flicker, a spark of recognition, of knowing. This was the first time in his life he had ever seen my face. A smile formed on his lips, a dry, cracked, painful-looking twitch. A sound, a dry, papery rustle, escaped his throat. "I wondered," he whispered, his voice so weak I had to lean in to hear it, "if I would get to thank you before I died." The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not the roaring silence of the overpass or the tense, fearful silence of the parking lot, but a deep, profound, peaceful quiet. I was on a soft bed in a guest room larger than my entire first apartment. The storm had passed, leaving a clean, cold, sunlit world. I shot out of bed, heart pounding. Lena. I ran barefoot down the carpeted hall to the medical wing. The doors were open. I found her not in the hospital bed, but in the second, unused one, which had been remade with soft white linens. She was asleep, genuinely asleep. The terrible flushed red was gone. Her skin, a normal pale olive. The rattling in her chest was quiet. And 4-line was taped to her small hand, a clear bag dripping steadily above her. The oxygen mask was gone, replaced by a simple, clear nasal cannula. And the monitor next to her bed showed a steady, beautiful 98. Dr. Albescu was sitting in a chair in the corner, reading a medical journal. He looked up as I entered, a small, kind smile touching his face. "Good morning, Miss Sanchez." The fever broke around 3 a.m. The antibiotics are working their magic. She has a strong case of pneumonia, but she is a strong girl. She is past the crisis. I walked over to the bed and put my hand on her forehead. It was cool. Just cool. I had to brace myself against the bed frame as the relief, the sheer, bone-deep gratitude, hit me so hard it made me dizzy. I was a guest in a billionaire's fortress, a vagrant in a borrowed silk robe, and my daughter was safe. The dread I felt in that moment was suffocating. Absolute. "You're okay, baby," I whispered, kissing her hair. "She will be," the doctor said, closing his journal. "She needs to stay on the antibiotics for at least a week, and I want to monitor her for another 48 hours, but the worst is over." Nina appeared in the doorway, as silently as ever. She was holding a tray with coffee and toast. "Miss Sanchez, I am glad you slept. When you are ready, Mr. Lockhart is awake. He has asked for you." An hour later, I was showered, dressed in clean, simple clothes, a black sweater and gray slacks that had been left in my closet, magically my size. I was clean, fed, and my daughter was breathing. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, an actor given a new, unbelievable part to play. I went back to Roman's room. The morning light was pouring in, but it couldn't reach the man in the bed. He looked even more fragile than he had the night before, but his pale blue eyes were open, alert, and fixed on the doorway as I entered. "Miss Sanchez," he rasped. "Come in. Sit." Nina adjusted his pillows and left a glass of water with a straw near his hand, then melted away, leaving us alone. I took the hardback chair by his bed. "How is your girl?" he asked, his voice a dry whisper. She's so much better." "Your doctor? What you've done?" "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Lockhart." "You already did, Ariana," he said, using my first name. It sounded strange coming from him. "You paid me back 12 years ago on a highway. With interest. I am just settling a long overdue account." He paused, taking a slow, shallow breath. "Nina told you, I suppose, that I've been watching." I nodded, unsure what to say. "That night on the highway," he said, his eyes drifting to the ceiling as if watching a movie only he could see, "that was not an accident. I built an empire, child. Lockhart Transit. Trucks. Logistics. Now autonomous fleets. When you build something that big, you are not just a businessman. You are a target. You are a king with 100 usurpers." He turned his piercing gaze back to me. My brakes were cut. An elegant, simple, brutal solution. A rival, a network of rivals, I came to believe, wanted me dead. They wanted my company, and I was in the way. That crash was meant to be my end. He spoke with a chilling matter-of-factness. When I woke up in the hospital, my first thought was not gratitude. It was paranoia. A very, very useful paranoia. I hired the best private